Nancy Pelosi say, well, the president didn't follow through with the science?
We must be, again, guided by science. We said from the start we must have a government-wide, evidence-based, science-based, coordinated way to go forward.
This is something that we're constantly hearing, not just about Republicans, but about conservatives widely, broadly. And that is that consistently folks in the media and the Democrats are always saying they don't follow the science. They're not listening to science. That is a constant trope that is thrown at people on the right. And I understand the point of, oh, you have people who are very skeptical of global warming, climate change, that sort of thing that provides some of the justification in their minds for making these claims. But even if that is the case, you cannot just blanket say that somehow Democrats have a monopoly on science, because that's nonsensical. It's false. It's not true in any way, shape, or form. And it is something that needs to be refuted. And of course, Nancy Pelosi won't give credit to President Trump for his handling of this, even at this point, even as of yesterday. I mean, here's the biggest thing. We need to see some aspects of unity in Washington, D.C., not just in terms of passing a stimulus package, relief bill, whatever you want to call it, that's trillions of dollars. And in many respects, it's not a very good piece of legislation. We've talked about that here on this show. I'm not a fan of the $6 trillion total bill that the Congress passed last week and President Trump signed into law. But when Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, is in the middle of an interview, she shouldn't be being political. Now, that's not to say that President Trump hasn't been political in some regards. I get that, some of the language that he's used. But Nancy Pelosi is going well beyond anything that President Trump can be criticized for as far as politicization in the midst of this crisis. And I think we need to see the Speaker of the House, the leader of the people's house, at least talk positively about the mitigation steps that the Trump administration has been taking. It is crucial to keep that in mind. In fact, I want to just emphasize that yesterday's press conference was dominated more not by President Trump, not by Vice President Pence, but even more in terms of answering questions on the data and what's going on for mitigation efforts by Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. That's exactly as it should be. It's exactly as it is. And yesterday we saw a very sober President Trump presenting the facts and data to the American people exactly as he needed to. And we should be able to rally together as a people. You know, the media has been blasting President Trump for having Mike Lindell, the founder and CEO of MyPillow, at his press conference on Monday, where Lindell got out there and in part he talked a little bit about his faith and so forth. Well, this is a guy whose company, through its own free will, has decided to start making thousands, tens of thousands of face masks instead of pillows. And instead, the MyPillow guy gets pilloried by the media for coming out there, being a part of this press conference, talking about President Trump in positive terms, and also bringing in faith. They couldn't even acknowledge that Mike Lindell of MyPillow was saying, we are producing tens of thousands of much-needed masks, beginning this week, I think he said, for those who are in need across the country. And now the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, is even debating the idea, it's reported, that every American should be encouraged to get and wear a mask, which doesn't jive with what the administration folks have been saying or the media have been saying for the past month about masks. If this is the case, though, the CDC may come out publicly and say, hey, every American, we encourage you to wear a mask. If that's the case, we need a lot more masks. And the fact that Mike Lindell and MyPillow are getting out there and producing masks now instead of pillows should be something they should praise. Instead, you have Nancy Pelosi and others saying, well, you know, the Defense Production Act needs to be implemented more by President Trump. In fact, Joe Biden yesterday, this is cut 6 before we wrap up and run to our break here. Joe Biden yesterday was touting in cut 6 how the Trump administration, President Trump in particular, is not invoking the Defense Production Act nearly enough, even though he just did it on Friday. And as we talked about with Elizabeth Wright of Citizens Against Government Waste yesterday here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, the Trump administration, President Trump in particular, should not be even moving forward one bit, one iota with the Defense Production Act, especially because it's unnecessary. But here's Joe Biden, Democrat nominee in waiting yesterday on CNN.
Been very slow to act on a whole range of things. For example, he still hasn't fully invoked the Defense Production Act, which I called for a while ago. He finally did with General Motors after a little roundabout in terms of building ventilators. What about the masks? What about those gowns that those nurses and doctors need? They're made of paper. What about the goggles they need, the face shields? What about the gloves they need? He can do that by the Defense Production Act right now. He could have done it yesterday, a week ago, 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. They're in short supply. And our first responders are literally risking and some losing their lives to try to help the American people.
What is it about Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi that they have to say, we need the federal government to effectively, for the time being at least, nationalize these companies, like President Trump already did, wrongfully in my view, on Friday with the Defense Production Act vis-a-vis GM? When you have companies that are stepping up like MyPillow, and then when a company like MyPillow steps up and takes initiative, instead they focus, as we mentioned before, on blasting the CEO for how he talked at the press conference where he discussed what his company is doing to help provide face masks. We don't need the Defense Production Act, and we need the media and the politicians to highlight those companies that are stepping up of their own accord, like, by the way, General Motors was already doing with Ventec, which makes ventilators. It fits in with the theme we talked about with Marc Lotter a few minutes ago, where the media constantly deriding President Trump in the middle of this crisis. He's not handled this perfectly. There are definitely things to be critical of, but they're like 99% critical of President Trump on this issue in particular. I mean, everything, but especially this issue. And that, my friends, is very striking. And Joe Biden continues consistently to be touting the idea of invoking the Defense Production Act time after time after time. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger. You are watching Jimmy at the Crossroads in partnership with the Washington Examiner. We're going to take a